The violinists played as if their strings held the ceremony together. Everything was immaculate: imported orchids, champagne towers, soft golden lighting bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. It was the kind of wedding the press would call a union of power and legacy. Edward Morrison stood at the altar in a custom-tailored suit that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. He looked every inch the empire heir he was born to be, confident, composed, and utterly unaware. Annabel Cross, the bride, was radiant in silk. Everything about her presence was precise, from the cut of her dress to the careful curve of her smile. Their hands met in the middle. Cameras flashed. The pastor opened his book. And then, the microphone crackled. No one noticed at first. A faint pop, maybe feedback. Then a voice. Low. Steady. Familiar. You forget one thing, Edward. You already have a family. Gasps rippled like waves through the white sea of guests. The pastor froze mid-sentence. Edward's jaw clenched. Slowly, he turned toward the massive screen behind him, where a photo had appeared. It wasn't edited. It wasn't fake. It was her. Leah. Standing in profile. Her hand resting on her swollen belly. Eyes glassy with tears, but strong. So much stronger than he remembered. Before the shock could settle, the aisle parted like scripture. She was walking toward him. 6 years had changed her. She looked thinner, harder. Her hair was longer now, darker. But her posture, that was the same. Straight spine, chin lifted like she was ready to go to war. In each hand, a child. A boy and a girl. No one moved. No one breathed. Not even Edward. The boy looked up at him with those same blue-gray eyes Edward saw in the mirror every morning. Impossible, he thought. No. Not possible. She was gone. She disappeared. I searched. Leah stopped just before the altar. The microphone in her hand never shook. You built your empire on ashes, Edward, she said, voice calm. But some things don't burn. And with a nod to the stunned crowd, she added. I'm not here to ruin your wedding. I'm here to give you a choice. Edward couldn't move. His hands, moments ago warm around Annabel's fingers, now felt cold. Empty. Every muscle in his body tensed like a man preparing for impact. But nothing, not even a head-on collision, could have hit harder than the sound of Leah's voice. She was supposed to be gone. No, not gone. She was gone. She had vanished. Erased herself. And he had let her go. Security, Annabel whispered to someone behind her, her voice sharp and low. Edward raised a hand. No, it came out too fast, too raw. No one touches her. Leah's eyes flicked to him, unreadable. The children beside her stayed close, clinging to her hands, but calm. Not shy. Just watchful. Like they'd been trained to expect reactions. Even ugly ones. He couldn't look at them too long. The resemblance was undeniable, the way the boy stood with his chin raised, the way the girl's nose scrunched ever so slightly when the lights hit her face. They weren't just hers. They were his. He swallowed hard, but the lump in his throat stayed lodged. Why now? He asked. It wasn't a question of timing. It was a cry of disbelief, of dread. He had buried that chapter, mourned it. Or at least convinced himself he had. Because now, you can't hide, Leah said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was quiet, like she had nothing left to prove. The screen behind her shifted again. This time, not a photo. A document. A research paper. Watermarked. Confidential. Then another, financial records. Then a blurry image of a signature. His. No one here cares about our past, she continued, facing the crowd now. So I'll keep this simple. She raised a remote and clicked one last time. The screen now showed an internal memo from Morrison Corp. A familiar project name glowed at the top, Orem 13. The color drained from Edward's face. You knew, he said, more to himself than her. I proved, she corrected. You just didn't want to listen. The silence was suffocating. The children fidgeted slightly. Leah bent to whisper something in their ears, and they both stepped back toward a woman waiting near the end of the aisle, young, in jeans, holding their bags. Leah stood tall again. Alone. I'll leave now, she said softly, surprising everyone. You can go back to your perfect wedding, if you want. She turned to go. But before she took a step, she added without looking back. You might want to start with checking who you trust. Because I didn't disappear. I was erased. 6 years ago. Same house. Different life. Rain hammered the windows like fists. Thunder cracked overhead. In the office, behind a desk made from imported walnut, Edward held the printed photos like they were poison. Leah. In a hotel lobby. Another man's hand on her back. Leah. Getting into a cab. Not alone. Leah. Smiling. Laughing. His stomach churned. I didn't, she started, standing across from him in a simple black dress still dusted with rain. Don't lie to me. His voice was low. Controlled. That scared her more than shouting. I don't even know that man, she said, stepping forward. This is a setup. Someone is trying to. I saw the timestamps, Edward snapped. The night of our anniversary dinner. You cancelled. Said you were stuck at the lab. You were with him. No, I was at the lab. Working on Orem's protein sequence, Edward, please. You know me. He hesitated. That was the crack. She saw it, just a flicker in his eyes. But then he looked at the photos again. The crack closed. I don't know who you are anymore, he said. You've been distracted for months. Cold. Secretive. And now this. Leah's hands curled into fists. Not out of rage. Out of desperation. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air like gunfire in a church. He blinked. Shook his head. No. Not now. You're not doing this now. I'm not doing anything. This is real, Edward. Our baby. You expect me to believe that's mine? Silence. Like the earth stood still. And Leah, brilliant, bold Leah, broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. She just stopped. The light in her eyes dimmed. She picked up her coat from the chair. Took one last look at the man she had loved since grad school. The man she built a company with. A future with. I hope one day, she said, you feel even half of what I felt tonight. And then she left. No luggage. No plan. No place to go. Just 2 beating hearts in her chest, hers and the child's. Present day. Edward sat in his study that night, long after the ruined wedding was emptied of guests. The house was quiet again. He stared at the same old walnut desk. The same drawer where those photos had been locked away. He opened it now. Inside, the file. Still there. But this time, he looked closer. Really looked. The shadows didn't match. The angles were wrong. The timestamp metadata had been altered. His throat tightened. Someone had wanted her gone. And he had helped them do it. There are things you never forget. The weight of the hospital blanket. The way contractions feel when you have no one's hand to hold. The silence in the delivery room when no one says, "Congratulations." Leah remembered all of it. She gave birth under a false name in a public hospital. No visitors. No flowers. Just two tiny newborns who looked at her like she was their whole world. Because she was. She named them Maxwell and Lillian, Max and Lily. He would have liked the names. She hated that she still thought about what he would have liked. The early months were brutal. She lived in shelters, small-town motels, backroom rentals with flickering lights and mold in the corners. Sometimes she ate, sometimes she didn't. But the twins always did. Always. By year 1, she found work, first as a lab tech under the table, then as a freelance researcher for small bio startups. No one asked too many questions as long as the results were clean. And Leah? She was brilliant. Even half broken, she was still brilliant. But one question haunted her every day: who did this to me? Year 3 brought a lead. A whisper from an old colleague who thought she was dead. Orem 13 structure changed right after you were gone. They said it was your formula, but it wasn't. It was worse. Worse, and dangerous. They were rushing it to market, skipping trials. Suppressing side effects. And the money? Too much of it was going to offshore accounts, funneled through shell foundations tied to one name, Simon Gray. Edward's most trusted friend. The man who handed him the photos. That was the moment Leah stopped grieving. And started building. Year 4, she created Elrise Bio, under a different identity. Just a name at first. Then a garage lab. Then grants. Then results. She rebuilt the original Orem formula, the safe version. The real one. And this time, she made sure every step was documented, traceable, irrefutable. Year 5, she filed a patent, still under a pseudonym. And sold it. Quietly. Not for profit. For leverage. She wasn't here to destroy Edward. She was here to make him see the truth. To drag every lie out into the light. And if he didn't stand with her, she'd do it alone. The night before the wedding, she sat on the edge of a hotel bed, watching her children sleep. Lily curled up like a kitten. Max always kicked off the blanket. They didn't know the details. Just that they were going to see their father. And that he hadn't known they existed. Yet. Leah traced her finger across Max's brow. He had Edward's eyes. His temper too. But Leah's fire. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, the world would see them. Edward hadn't slept. The mansion was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. He sat alone in his office, hunched over his laptop. For the first time in years, he was combing through files himself instead of relying on someone else's filtered reports. He didn't trust anyone anymore. Not even the people closest to him. Not after what Leah said. Not after looking into those children's eyes. He cross-checked timestamps, metadata, internal memos, travel logs, payroll documents. What started as doubt was becoming certainty, and it made him sick. The photos had been doctored. The research reports had been forged. Leah had been telling the truth. He slammed the laptop shut and pressed his palms to his face. I sent her away. I let them erase her. I let them erase my children. A sudden knock broke the stillness. He looked up sharply. Who is it? Simon, came the muffled reply. Can we talk? Edward opened the door slowly. Simon stood there in his usual tailored suit, expression calm, too calm. You didn't come to the office today, Simon said lightly, stepping in without invitation. Rough night? Edward stared. Where were these taken? He held up a folder, the original photos. I want the raw files. Simon blinked. Just a flicker. I sent them to you 6 years ago, he said. I thought we'd buried that. We did. Edward's tone was cold now. Turns out we buried the wrong person. Simon gave a tight smile. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. She showed up with kids and a dramatized sob story. They're mine, Edward snapped. And I want to know what the hell you were covering up. For the first time in their 15-year friendship, Simon looked genuinely thrown off balance. Just for a second. Then he recovered. I think you need sleep, he said, turning toward the door. And a very, very good PR team. Later that night, Edward pulled out an old backup drive, one of the secure ones only he and Leah used during early research days. He'd forgotten it even existed. He connected it. Waited. Inside, hundreds of encrypted files. He clicked one at random. Then another. Then one marked, side effects, animal trials, red flag. His breath caught. Organ failure. Neurological decline. Cardiac arrest within weeks. Covered up. Rebranded. Ignored. And they put it on the market anyway. The drug had made Morrison Corp billions. At the cost of God knows how many lives. And the woman who tried to stop it? He had thrown her into the dark. He leaned back, every muscle tight. She hadn't come to destroy him. She came to save him, from the truth he helped bury. And she wasn't bluffing. She had the proof. It started with a single email. Subject line, the truth about Oprema 13. It was sent to 5 journalists, 3 whistleblower watchdogs, 2 medical boards, and 1 anonymous hacker collective. Attached was a drive link. Inside, everything. Lab results. Financial trails. Internal memos with forged timestamps. Footage of suppressed test trials. Side effects that were scrubbed. And most damning of all. A voice recording. Simon Gray, mid-laugh, bragging about fast-tracking Oprema with a few creative adjustments. Leah hadn't wanted to go nuclear. But after her appearance at the wedding, the silence from Edward told her enough, either he was still processing or still protecting. And she didn't have time to wait for him to grow a conscience. By midday, the internet was on fire. Hashtag Morrison cover-up. Hashtag Oprema scandal. Hashtag she told the truth. The story hit headlines around the world. Stock prices plummeted. Government agencies issued statements. Class action lawsuits flooded in. And in the middle of it all, Leah Morrison, no longer erased. A photo from her wedding day appearance went viral. The shot of her standing in front of the screen, with the twins behind her, became iconic. Some called her a mother. Some called her a whistleblower. Some called her dangerous. They were all right. The press conference was held the next morning in a modest hotel ballroom downtown, far from the glossy Morrison Corp tower. Leah wore no makeup, no designer clothes. Just a dark blouse and tired eyes. She stood at the podium, flashes popping, questions flying. Are you accusing Edward Morrison directly? She didn't blink. I'm accusing the people who silenced data, threatened employees, and pushed a drug they knew was unsafe. If Edward was unaware, he was willfully so. Do you have proof of his involvement? She hesitated. Just for a second. I have proof he was warned. Meanwhile, across the city, Edward stood in his penthouse, watching it all unfold on a muted screen. Annabelle was gone. Her family's lawyers had already pulled investments. Morrison Corp's board was panicking. Shareholders were demanding his resignation. And Leah was calm. Controlled. Everything he used to be. He picked up the phone. Dialed a number he hadn't used in 6 years. Voicemail. Leah, we need to talk. Back at the press conference, a young reporter asked. Do you want revenge? Leah looked down at her notes. Then out at the cameras. No, she said. I want accountability. And after that, I want my children to know that when the world tried to erase their mother, she stood back up. She didn't tell him where to find her. But he knew. The old lab, the one they used before the first investment, before the company name, back when it was just ideas and too much caffeine and two people in love with science and each other. He hadn't been back in years. When he pushed the door open, the air was thick with memories. Scratched countertops. Faded diagrams still ghosting the whiteboard. The smell of dust and disinfectant. And her. Leah stood at the table, arms crossed. Not surprised to see him. You came, she said. You expected me to. She nodded once. Then silence. He stepped closer, carefully, like she might vanish again. You were right. I know. I didn't want to believe the photos. Then why did you? She asked, not accusing, just tired. Edward looked down. I was scared. I didn't understand how you'd pulled away. You were distant, always in the lab, distracted. I thought. You thought I was cheating, she said flatly. While pregnant with your children. The words landed like a slap. He didn't defend himself. He couldn't. I was weak, he said. I let someone I trusted turn me into someone you couldn't recognize. Leah studied him. You didn't just let them, she said softly. You helped them. You signed off on the data. You let them release that drug, Edward. People died. I know, he whispered. I've read the reports. I saw your files. I saw everything. I was blind. No, she said. You closed your eyes. That hurt more than anything else she could have said. He took another step forward. I want to make this right. You can't. Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. You can't give me back the years I spent afraid. Alone. Raising two kids without a father. You can't undo what Oprema did to those patients. You can't resurrect what we used to be. I know, he said. But I can stand with you now. If you'll let me. She looked at him for a long time. Finally, she asked, why? Guilt? No. Because when I saw you walk down that aisle, I saw the only person in the world brave enough to do what I never could. And because our children deserve the truth, not just about the past. About the future. Leah turned away, wiping at her face quickly. They've asked about you, she said after a beat. I told them you weren't ready. He swallowed. I am now. She turned back, eyes red but steady. Then prove it. 3 weeks later, Edward stood before the Morrison Corp boardroom, not as a CEO, but as a man prepared to lose everything. The scandal had gutted the company. Investigations were ongoing. Investors had fled. And yet, he stood there calmly, papers in hand, sleeves rolled up. I take full responsibility, he said. Not just for what happened under my leadership, but for how long I chose silence over scrutiny. My resignation is effective immediately. Murmurs. He placed one final document on the table. And I nominate a new interim director, someone with integrity. With proof. With vision. The name at the top of the page, Dr. Leah Riley. Outside, Leah waited with Max and Lily, their hands sticky with ice cream, their shoes scuffed from running through the garden downstairs. The cameras still followed her everywhere, but she no longer flinched. This wasn't her revenge. It was her restoration. Did he do it? Max asked. He did, Leah said. Is he coming with us now? She hesitated. He's coming with us to some things. Not everything. Not yet. Grown-ups need time to fix their mistakes too. Lily was drawing something in a sketchbook. She held it up, four stick figures holding hands. "This is us," she said. "Now." Leah smiled, blinking hard. "That's beautiful." A month later, in a quiet lab under a new name, Leah ran tests on the updated formula, hers, not theirs. It was already saving lives. The press had moved on. But she hadn't. She was still working. Still fighting. Some things never changed. One evening, Edward showed up with takeout and two tiny lab coats folded under his arm. "I thought they might like to visit," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "You trying to bribe me with food?" "I'm trying," he said simply. "To be present. Not perfect. Just, here." She let him in. They didn't kiss. They didn't say the words. But they stood side by side, watching Max and Lily pretend to run experiments, and for the first time in years, there was peace. Some things don't survive betrayal. But some things survive everything.